Captain Rodriguez exited the diplomatic chamber with a practiced neutral expression that masked her frustration. Lieutenant Maya Patel, Earth's xenolinguist, walked beside her, tablet clutched tightly to her chest. That went about as expected. Rodriguez sighed once they were alone in the transfer corridor. The translucent tube offered a breathtaking view of Centauri Station's sprawling architecture. Massive crystalline structures interwoven with biological components that seemed to breathe and pulse with energy. They see our technology as primitive, but they're missing what makes us unique, Paddle replied, her eyes tracking a group of methane-breathing Volari floating past in their environment bubbles. Back aboard their ship, the Horizon, the human delegation gathered in the conference room. Through the viewport, countless alien vessels glided through space, many appearing to defy physics as understood by human science. Some were translucent, others absorbed all light, and a few seemed to exist partially in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. Commander Jackson Chen tapped his console, displaying the Alliance's official assessment of humanity. Pre-emergent civilization, he read aloud. Technological development. Accelerated but rudimentary. Societal structure. Fragmented. Recommended integration level. Minimum observational status only. They've categorized us alongside species that haven't even achieved unified planetary government. Dr. Elias Okafor, the mission's anthropologist, remarked with a frown. We're being shelved and forgotten. Rodriguez stood, commanding the room's attention. I've seen this before. My grandfather was an immigrant who got the same dismissive treatment when he arrived in a new country. People assumed he had nothing to offer because he didn't speak the language or understand the customs. She gestured to the elegant alien ships outside. Yes, they have technology centuries beyond ours. But technology isn't everything. They've forgotten something that humanity has learned through millennia of struggle. Adaptability is the ultimate advantage. A notification chimed, and Rodriguez activated the comm panel. Captain, we've been assigned quarters, reported Ensign Kavita Shah. Section 42G. It's in the station's outer ring, typically reserved for maintenance staff and auxiliary species. Several crew members exchanged looks of indignation, but Rodriguez merely smiled. Perfect. The periphery is where you learn how things really work. The center only shows you the polished facade. What's our mission now, Captain? Asked Chen. Observe and report back. Rodriguez's expression hardened with determination. Our mission is to prove them wrong. Not with grand gestures or desperate attempts to impress them, but by being stubbornly, persistently human. She activated the room's holographic display, bringing up schematics of Centauri Station. We start by learning everything about this place, not just the official channels, but the maintenance corridors, the supply chains, the communication networks. Where do the different species interact informally? Who holds actual influence versus titular power? We'll form relationships with the staff species in our section, Paddle suggested, already grasping the captain's approach. The overlooked ones often know more than the leaders. Exactly, Rodriguez nodded. The Alliance has categorized us as observers, so let's observe, more deeply and thoroughly than they could possibly anticipate. Because someday they'll face a problem their advanced technology can't solve. And when that day comes, humanity's unique perspective might be exactly what the galaxy needs. 3 separate emergency alerts blared through Centauri Station simultaneously, creating a cacophony that made several humans cover their ears. The Alliance Council chamber, normally a model of decorum, had descended into chaos. Representatives from 17 species argued in their native tongues, translator devices struggling to keep pace. Lieutenant Chen watched from the observer section, documenting everything. She noticed High Counselor Zix's secondary appendages trembling, a physiological tell the xenobiologists had identified as extreme stress in the counselor species. The evacuation order stands, declared Admiral Voss of the Krith Defense Force. His silicon-based body reflected the chamber's emergency lighting in harsh red patterns. All non-essential personnel will relocate to systems beyond the Perseus Gap. Captain Rodriguez leaned toward Chen. Evacuation. They're giving up already. Elder Thogzan of the Lumari rose to their full 3-meter height, crystalline form resonating with a harmonic undertone that commanded attention. The historical records are clear. The harvesters cannot be defeated through conventional means. We sacrificed 17 worlds in the last incursion cycle before they departed of their own accord. Chen's tablet chimed with an incoming data packet, sensor readings forwarded by Dr. Williams, who had managed to tap into the Alliance's deep space monitoring network. The human delegation had spent their 3 months of observational status, building an intricate web of information sources throughout the station. She analyzed the readings quickly, eyes widening. "Captain, look at this energy signature," she whispered. "It's not random destruction. There's a pattern to the consumption rate. Different materials are being processed at specific intervals." Rodriguez studied the data. During her 20 years in Earth's space program, she had encountered countless anomalies. The difference between humans and many Alliance species was simple. Where they saw chaos, humans looked for patterns. "Get Williams and Patel," she ordered. "I want a full analysis before we request speaking privileges." Meanwhile, the Alliance debate had shifted to resource allocation. The Meldari representative, a swirling cloud of ionized gas confined within an ornate containment field, pulsed rapidly. Priority evacuation must be granted to information repositories and genetic banks, the Meldari insisted, their translated voice artificially modulated. Physical populations can be reconstituted if core data survives. The Volari delegation erupted in protest, methane bubbles roiling within their environment spheres. Unacceptable. The Meldari prioritize data because they exist partially as information patterns. Biological species require physical evacuation. From her vantage point, Rodriguez noticed something troubling. Despite the argument about evacuation priorities, none of the species were discussing resistance. The Alliance, with all its advanced technology and combined knowledge spanning millions of years, had already accepted defeat. Dr. Williams arrived, breathless from running through the station's gravity-shifting corridors. "Captain, we've compiled the analysis. The harvesters aren't just consuming. They're sampling, like a scientist taking core samples." Patel joined them, adding, "We've cross-referenced with Earth's historical records. This behavior resembles resource prospecting more than random destruction." Rodriguez stood, decision made. "Request emergency speaking privileges. If the Alliance has already decided to run, they have nothing to lose by hearing us out." As Lieutenant Chen transmitted the formal request through diplomatic channels, Rodriguez prepared her approach. The Alliance saw humans as primitive, but perhaps that perspective was exactly what they needed. Fresh eyes unbound by millennia of established thinking. The chamber's attention system chimed, and High Counselor Zix turned all 12 eyes toward the human section with visible surprise. The observers from Earth request speaking privileges. "Given the unprecedented circumstances, I am granting this request." The Alliance Council chamber fell into stunned silence as Lieutenant Chen manipulated the holographic display. The 3-dimensional model of the harvester's path twisted and reconfigured under her nimble fingers, highlighting subtle deviations that told a different story than simple consumption. "We cross-referenced stellar phenomena with consumption rates," Chen explained, her voice steady despite addressing the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The harvesters slow down near neutron stars with specific rotation patterns and accelerate after passing systems with high concentrations of exotic matter. Dr. Williams stepped forward, adding technical detail. "They're particularly interested in systems where quantum fluctuations exceed baseline by more than 2 standard deviations. Every major course adjustment correlates with unusual quantum signatures." High Counselor Zix's appendages twitched skeptically. "This pattern recognition is interesting but offers no practical defense. Even if they are searching, they still destroy everything in their path." Captain Rodriguez took over, her diplomatic training evident. With respect, counselor, it changes everything. If they're searching, we can create what they're looking for, or at least a convincing facsimile. The crystalline Elder Thogzan resonated at a frequency that indicated deep contemplation. You propose to mislead entities that exist partially beyond conventional spacetime. The computational requirements would be enormous. Not if we work with their nature rather than against it, Chen countered. We don't need to create a perfect copy of what they seek, just something enticing enough to alter their trajectory. The Meldari representative pulsed rapidly, their containment field flickering with increased activity. Explain this quantum lure concept in practical terms. Dr. Williams activated his tablet, projecting schematics into the chamber center. We can use modified gravity wells to generate artificial quantum signatures, essentially creating a beacon that mimics the properties they find most interesting. The science is theoretical, admitted Chen, but the physics builds on principles we've observed in their behavior. A low murmur spread through the council. The Krith Defense Force representatives conferred, their silicon bodies clicking as they communicated via subsonic frequencies. Admiral Voss finally addressed the humans directly. Our probability engines calculate a success rate too low to justify resource allocation. The quantum manipulation you propose would require precision beyond your species' demonstrated capabilities. With respect, Admiral, Rodriguez replied, your probability calculations are based on known approaches. Humanity specializes in the unknown. She gestured to the projected model of the harvester path. Your civilizations evolved toward optimization, perfecting known solutions. Humans evolved to innovate under pressure, finding new solutions when existing ones fail. That's why we see patterns you've missed. Elder Thogzan's crystalline form shifted hues, indicating reassessment. Your proposal remains unlikely to succeed, but the alternatives offer certainty of failure. I support allocating resources to this human plan. One by one, other council members indicated reluctant support, not from conviction, but from the absence of alternatives. As the formal approval process began, Dr. Patel joined the human delegation, handing Captain Rodriguez a data tablet. Engineering team reports they found a way to modify our ship's quantum field generators, she whispered. And I've been analyzing the harvester communication attempts. Communication attempts. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. The Alliance reported no communication. They wouldn't recognize it as such, Patel explained. The harvesters emit patterns of charged particles during their consumption cycles. The Alliance classified it as waste expulsion, but the sequences are non-random. I believe they're transmitting something. Rodriguez's eyes widened slightly. Keep that insight quiet for now. If they're communicating, there might be more to this situation than a simple search and consume mission. Let's focus on getting approval for the quantum lure before introducing more complications. As the Council formalized their authorization, the human team exchanged knowing glances. The plan they'd presented was just the beginning. The Defiance hummed with activity as Alliance engineers integrated their advanced technology with human systems. The integration wasn't going smoothly. Captain Rodriguez mediated between frustrated human technicians and bewildered alien specialists in the engine room. Your power distribution network is entirely too linear, complained the Krith engineer, his silicon appendages manipulating human circuitry with obvious disdain. Energy should flow in recursive patterns to maximize efficiency. Chief Engineer Novak wiped sweat from her brow. Linear systems are easier to repair in crisis situations. Not everything needs to be perfectly efficient to be effective. Rodriguez intervened before the argument escalated. Both approaches have merit. Let's focus on creating a hybrid system that incorporates the best of both. In the ship's laboratory, Dr. Williams worked alongside Lumari scientists to calibrate the quantum lure. The crystalline beings moved with precision, born from millennia of experience, but struggled with the improvisational aspects of the device. The gravitational equations cannot be solved completely, stated the lead Lumari researcher. There are too many variables in flux. Williams nodded, adjusting calculations on his tablet. That's why we're building in adaptive algorithms. The system will recalibrate based on real-time feedback. Imprecise, the Lumari commented, crystal structure shifting to indicate disapproval. Adaptable, Williams countered with a smile. Sometimes flexibility outperforms precision when dealing with the unknown. On the bridge, Lieutenant Chen reviewed the mission parameters with the tactical team. The holographic display showed their planned intercept course, a complex trajectory that would bring them dangerously close to the harvesters while maintaining escape vectors. The manual calibration window is approximately 47 seconds, Chen explained. During that time, whoever is at the deployment site will be exposed to extreme gravitational fluctuations. A Meldari advisor pulsed anxiously within their containment sphere. The physiological stress would be fatal to most species. Our simulations indicate even Krith exoskeletons would buckle under such forces. I'll handle the calibration, volunteered Dr. Patel, entering the bridge with determination in her eyes. My background in xenolinguistics gives me the pattern recognition skills needed for real-time adjustments. Chen looked concerned. The risk is necessary, Patel finished. If the harvesters are attempting communication as I suspect, I'm best qualified to recognize and respond to any patterns during deployment. Captain Rodriguez joined them, reviewing the updated plans. The Alliance has provided gravity compensation technology that should help, but it's still going to be extremely dangerous. Outside the viewport, Centauri Station gleamed against the backdrop of space. Most Alliance vessels had already departed, evacuating toward safer regions. The Defiance remained, along with a small contingent of ships crewed by volunteers from various species, those unwilling to flee without a fight. That evening, as Captain Rodriguez had mentioned, the human crew gathered in the mess hall for their pre-mission meal. They'd invited their alien counterparts, many of whom observed the ritual with fascination. "Is this a religious ceremony?" asked a young Lumari scientist, watching humans share food and drinks with animated conversation. Rodriguez smiled. "In a way, it's about connection, reminding ourselves why we fight. Not just for survival, but for the moments worth surviving for." The Meldari representative, hovering near the table, pulsed in patterns indicating curiosity. "Your species faces extinction with celebration rather than contemplation. Most puzzling." Engineer Novik raised her glass. "We celebrate because we refuse to consider extinction as an option. Humans have faced apocalypse scenarios throughout our history, sometimes of our own making. We're still here. To impossible odds," Dr. Williams added, lifting his cup. "And impossible victories," finished Captain Rodriguez, completing the toast. The bridge crew of the Defiance fell silent as the harvesters responded to their mathematical broadcast. The entity's reconfiguration was unmistakable, a perfect mirror of the prime number sequence pattern they had transmitted. "It's not just mimicking," Chen whispered, analyzing the sensor data. "The response contains variations. It's extending the pattern we sent." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward in her command chair. "Dr. Patel, your assessment." Dr. Patel's fingers flew across her console, eyes wide with realization. "This is genuine communication. The sequence extensions follow logical progressions, but incorporate dimensional elements we hadn't considered. They're not just responding. They're correcting and expanding our mathematics." The Alliance representatives on the bridge exchanged looks of disbelief. The Krith science officer's silicon form had frozen in what their species considered shock. "Continue the exchange," Rodriguez ordered. "Dr. Williams, prepare the quantum lure for modified deployment. We're shifting from Plan A to Contingency Scenario 3. "Captain," Commander Chen questioned quietly. "If they're intelligent enough to communicate, they're intelligent enough to negotiate," Rodriguez explained. "The quantum lure becomes an offering rather than a trap." The Meldari representative pulsed rapidly in their containment sphere. "This exceeds mission parameters. The Alliance Council authorized interception and diversion only." With respect, Rodriguez replied without taking her eyes off the main view screen. "We're improvising. That's what humans do." Over the next hour, the mathematical exchange grew increasingly complex. The Defiance's computers struggled to process the multi-dimensional equations the harvesters were transmitting. Dr. Williams rerouted additional power to the computational arrays. "They're showing us something," he muttered, studying the patterns. "These aren't just mathematical concepts. They're describing physical processes." Dr. Patel nodded excitedly. "It's a form of physics we don't understand yet. Look at this section. They are explaining how they perceive and interact with reality." The Lumeri scientist, who had remained aboard voluntarily, approached the display, crystalline form resonating with interest. "This suggests they exist across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Their consumption may appear destructive from our perspective, but represents something entirely different in their framework. Like how a three-dimensional object passing through a two-dimensional plane would appear to the two-dimensional observers," Chen suggested. "They'd see cross-sections appearing, changing, and disappearing without understanding the whole." Captain Rodriguez made a decision. "Prepare to deploy the modified quantum lure. Instead of creating a diversion, we'll use it as a demonstration model, showing them how to extract the information they seek without disrupting our dimensional space." The ship moved carefully closer to the nearest harvester, maintaining just enough distance to avoid the gravitational distortions at its edges. Through the viewports, the crew could see the entity more clearly now, its impossible geometry shifting constantly, surfaces that seemed to fold into themselves in ways human eyes struggle to process. Dr. Patel prepared for the calibration sequence, donning the specialized suit enhanced with Alliance gravity compensation technology. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "The mathematics suggests they're information gatherers, not destroyers," she told Captain Rodriguez as she prepared to enter the deployment chamber. "If I'm right, this will be the most important first contact in human history." Rodriguez gripped her shoulder briefly. "And if you're wrong?" Patel smiled tightly. "Then I'll have conducted the shortest xenolinguistic study on record." As the deployment chamber door sealed, Rodriguez returned to the command chair, expression revealing nothing of her concern. "Commence countdown sequence. All hands to positions. Let's show these cosmic entities how humans negotiate." Dr. Patel's breakthrough with the infant entity theory transformed the mission. The deployment chamber had been converted into a makeshift communication hub, filled with hastily assembled equipment from both human and Alliance technology. The patterns in their responses correspond with neural development stages, she explained to the assembled team, pointing to comparison charts on the main display. What we initially interpreted as destruction is actually their equivalent of sensory exploration. Lieutenant Chen studied the data. "Like how babies put things in their mouths to understand them." "Exactly," Patel nodded enthusiastically. "But in their case, they're sampling reality itself, breaking down matter and energy to comprehend fundamental structures." The Lumeri scientists' crystalline form shifted through analytical color patterns. "If this hypothesis is correct, they may be the youngest entities we've ever encountered, despite their immense power. Newly emerged from wherever they originated." Captain Rodriguez paced the chamber, considering implications. "So we're essentially dealing with cosmic toddlers who don't realize they're hurting others when they explore." "That's one interpretation," Dr. Williams confirmed, adjusting the quantum lure's configuration. "And like toddlers, they learn quickly. Our mathematical exchanges have already altered their consumption patterns. They're becoming more selective, avoiding inhabited systems." The Meldari representative, who had initially opposed deviation from mission parameters, now hovered closer to the communication array. Their containment sphere pulsed with scholarly interest. "Your species' insight is unexpected," the Meldari admitted. "Our telepathic attempts to scan the harvesters detected only hunger. We failed to recognize it as curiosity rather than malevolence." Engineer Novak looked up from recalibrating the ship's sensors. "Sometimes understanding comes easier from outside a situation. Humans spent millennia trying to communicate with Earth species like dolphins and apes. We developed frameworks for recognizing non-human intelligence. The quantum lure modifications are complete," Williams announced. Instead of simply attracting their attention, it now functions as a demonstration model, showing how information can be extracted without dimensional disruption. Rodriguez nodded. Deploy when ready. The modified device launched toward the nearest harvester. As it activated, it generated a controlled field that mimicked the entity's sampling process, but contained the effects within a stable bubble of space-time. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then the harvester shifted, extending a portion of its impossible geometry toward the device. Contact was made. The ship's sensors recorded massive data exchanges occurring at quantum levels. "They're studying it," Patel whispered, "learning from our demonstration." Gradually, the harvester changed its configuration. Its consumption field altered, becoming more focused and controlled. Where before it had absorbed everything in its path, it now appeared to be developing precision, taking only minimal samples from the space around it. "They're adapting," Chen observed in awe, "evolving their behavior based on our suggestion." The Alliance observers watched in stunned silence. The Krith probability engine, an AI designed to calculate outcomes, had assigned a 0.27% chance of success to the mission. Yet humans had accomplished the seemingly impossible through a perspective shift no advanced species had considered. Commander Chen approached Captain Rodriguez quietly. "The Alliance flagship is requesting permission to return to the area. Apparently, word of our progress has reached the Council." Rodriguez smiled slightly. "Permission granted. We could use their help establishing more comprehensive communication protocols." Dr. Patel looked up from her console, eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. "Captain, the harvesters are transmitting new mathematical sequences, significantly more complex than before. I think they're trying to explain their origins." "Their origins?" Williams asked, joining her at the console. Patel nodded, unable to contain her excitement. "Based on these equations, they may not be from our universe at all." The Defiance's return to Alliance space triggered celebrations across 17 systems. Images of Captain Rodriguez and her crew dominated public feeds throughout the civilization bands. The ship docked at Centauri Station's primary bay, a stark contrast to their initial relegation to the maintenance section. In the Grand Council chamber, High Counselor Zix led the formal reception. All 12 eyes focused on the human delegation. "The Alliance acknowledges the extraordinary contribution of Earth," Zix announced, appendages moving in formal ceremonial patterns. "Your species has accomplished what our most advanced civilizations deemed impossible." Captain Rodriguez accepted the recognition with diplomatic grace, but her mind was already focused on the next phase. The Defiance's databanks contained information that would transform galactic science, glimpses into physics beyond conventional understanding. The real work began in the hastily established Interdimensional Research Center. Alliance scientists from dozens of species gathered as Dr. Williams and Dr. Patel presented their findings. The harvesters, or cognitors, as they've designated themselves, exist within a dimensional framework that intersects with our universe at quantum nodes, Williams explained, manipulating the holographic model. Their natural sensory process involves breaking down matter into informational patterns. A senior Krith scientist raised a silicon appendage. "Our probability engines failed to predict your success. We have recalibrated using human cognitive patterns, but the models remain unstable." "That's because human thinking isn't algorithmic," Chen suggested. "We rely on intuitive leaps alongside logical progression." Meanwhile, Dr. Patel worked with the Meldari cognition specialists to develop more sophisticated communication protocols with the cognitors. 3 of the entities had followed the Defiance back to Alliance space, maintaining safe distance from populated systems while continuing information exchanges. "They're essentially newborns by their own temporal standards," she explained during a briefing. "Their species evolves through information gathering rather than biological reproduction. Each new entity emerges from dimensional folds with basic structural knowledge, but must learn through exploration." Elder Thogzan, who had lived nearly 3,000 years, resonated contemplatively. "They perceive time differently than we do. What appears destructive to us is developmental to them. Exactly, Patel nodded. And they had no concept of separate consciousness before encountering us. In their native dimensional state, all information exists in a shared framework. The research teams worked around the clock, human scientists often finding solutions where Alliance specialists became trapped in conventional thinking. The cognitors proved eager students of three-dimensional ethics, adapting their exploration methods to minimize disruption once they understood the concept of separate beings. Captain Rodriguez observed these developments with satisfaction from the diplomatic wing, where she negotiated the terms of Earth's new status. The Alliance had offered unprecedented concessions, eager to secure human expertise for ongoing cognitor relations. "We've made remarkable progress," noted Commander Chen during an evening briefing. But some Alliance species remain wary of the cognitors. The Volari representatives are pushing for restrictive protocols. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "Fear is natural when facing the unknown. Our job isn't just to translate between species, but between perspectives." Dr. Williams entered with fresh data from the research center. "Captain, you should see this. The cognitors have shared information about 11 other dimensional intersections throughout the galaxy, places where entities like them might emerge in the future. Potential first contact points," Rodriguez realized. "Exactly. And according to Alliance historical records, several of these locations correspond with ancient myths about world eaters or reality storms, previous cognitor emergences that were misunderstood as disasters." Rodriguez studied the star chart thoughtfully. "So we have a chance to prepare for these encounters rather than reacting in fear. Humanity's greatest contribution might not be the current crisis management," Chen suggested, "but teaching the galaxy a new approach to the unknown." The 5th anniversary celebration transformed Mars Colony into a diplomatic hub unlike any in human history. Representatives from over 200 Alliance species gathered under the transparent domes, marveling at the red landscape beyond while sampling Earth cuisine and cultural exchanges. Admiral Rodriguez, recently promoted from her captaincy, watched with quiet pride as humans mingled effortlessly with beings of wildly different physiologies and evolutionary backgrounds. In just 5 years, Earth had gone from an overlooked curiosity to a central pillar of galactic cooperation. "The Lumary Council has approved the Joint Research Initiative," reported Commander Chen, now Earth's diplomatic liaison. "They're allocating 3 of their ancient archive ships to the Interdimensional Studies Academy." Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "And the Krith decision? Even better than we hoped. They're sending 50 of their brightest young scientists to study adaptive thinking methodologies on Earth. Apparently, the rigid educational structure they've maintained for millennia is being reevaluated." Across the reception hall, Dr. Patel engaged in animated conversation with a delegation of Meldari scholars, their containment spheres clustered close to hear her explanation of linguistic evolution principles. Since establishing regular communication with the cognitors, she had become the Alliance's foremost expert on nonlinear languages. "The most remarkable adaptation hasn't been technological," observed High Counselor Zix, approaching Rodriguez with ceremonial grace. "It's philosophical. Many species that evolve toward specialized perfection are recognizing the advantages of your generalist approach. Humans never had the luxury of perfect adaptation," Rodriguez replied. "Earth's environment changed too rapidly and dramatically. We survived through flexibility rather than specialization." In the center of the hall, a holographic display showcased the latest breakthrough, a dimensional translation framework that allowed for safer and more comprehensive exchanges with the cognitors. Dr. Williams stood nearby, explaining the principles to fascinated Alliance scientists. "The 6th cognitor entity emerged yesterday near Sector 87, Zix mentioned. Following your established protocols, first contact was peaceful and productive. Already it exhibits more controlled information gathering than its predecessors." Rodriguez smiled. "They're learning. And so are we." The most profound transformations were sometimes the least visible. Throughout Alliance space, educational institutions had begun incorporating elements of human learning methodologies, emphasizing creative problem-solving alongside knowledge acquisition. Species that had relied solely on their evolutionary advantages were exploring complementary approaches. The Krith, once rigidly logical, had begun experimenting with intuitive art forms. The telepathic Meldari were studying human literature to better understand non-connected consciousness. Even the ancient Lumari had established cultural exchange programs with Earth universities. The Cognitors have requested human representatives for their next dimensional exploration. 6 continued. They specifically asked for individuals with artistic and philosophical backgrounds alongside scientific expertise. Interesting choice, Rodriguez noted. Not surprising. Zix's appendages moved in what humans had learned was a gesture of respect. They value your species' ability to conceptualize beyond direct experience. The Alliance once considered human imagination a curious evolutionary quirk. We now recognize it as perhaps your most valuable contribution. As the celebration continued, news arrived from the edge of explored space. An Alliance vessel encountering an anomaly unlike any previously recorded. The ship's captain had immediately requested human specialists. Apparently, Shen reported with a hint of pride. The message simply read, "Unknown phenomenon defying conventional analysis. Request human perspective immediately." Rodriguez gazed around the reception hall, at humans and aliens working together, at the mutual respect that had replaced condescension, at the blending of approaches that had once seemed incompatible. The universe doesn't reward those who know all the answers, she mused. It favors those willing to ask new questions.